Across the Animal Crossing series, there's well over hundreds of thousands of words to even over 1 million words in some of the newer games. And with Animal Crossing having the reputation of being so impressive with the amount of depth, world building, and characteristics featured in the game, surely there's going to be some mistakes every now and again that slip through to the final release of a game. So let's look at some of the errors and mistakes from every Animal Crossing game. This first one's really interesting because in Animal Crossing Wild World and City Folk, the dinosaur fossil for the Seismosaur is one that you can dig up and put on display in your museum. And pretty much for the most part, all of the fossils in the Animal Crossing world are based on real life discoveries that have been made. However, when it comes to the Seismosaur, there's been much debate over the last 30 years over the classification of this dinosaur's classification. In the science world, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not the Seismosaur really should classify as its own thing, or if it really should fall under the classification of a Diplodocus, another similar shaped dinosaur. It seems like somewhere after the release of Animal Crossing City Folk, Nintendo decided to agree with some of the scientific talks suggesting that this was closer to a Diplodocus and not its own thing, because as of Animal Crossing New Leaf, Seismosaurs would be removed from the fossil pool in Animal Crossing games and replaced with the Diplodocus. And in both New Leaf and in New Horizons, the Diplo is what we see in those games. Interestingly enough though, 3 years after New Leaf released and the name was changed in Animal Crossing, paleontologist Emmanuel Schaap published an article, A Specimen Level Phylogenetic Analysis and Taxonomic Revision of Diplodocidae, peer-reviewed, suggesting that the Diplodocus really is the correct classification. So yeah, if you go back and play Wild World or City Folk, you might run into the naming of a dinosaur that's not actually accurate, but hey, at least they updated it by New Leaf and New Horizons, and it's kind of a little interesting tidbit about the Animal Crossing universe I never knew about until doing research for this video. Okay, how about some very simple spelling errors that somehow slipped through the localization process for Animal Crossing when they were working on the English version of New Horizons? I remember seeing this one on Twitter way back in the early days of Animal Crossing, right after the game released, where some of the Nook Mile quests sometimes had some interesting spelling errors, like this one where it tells you to craft you own when it means to say craft your own. They just forgot the R, no big deal. Also, if you remember in Animal Crossing New Horizons, if you bring 3 of the same species to Flick, he will make a little statue model of the insect that you bring to him. And in the early Animal Crossing days, in the first original version before any updates, when he was explaining the process, he said he would mail it your house. He's just missing the word "to" here. Okay, and then this next one really shouldn't count, but I'm gonna throw it in here too, just because it's interesting to see some pre-release Animal Crossing stuff. But Redditor Celestial Rage 44 discovered this one, that in the demo footage for Animal Crossing New Horizons, Mabel says, "We'd love to display your designs, of course, and if you want any of these designs, they're yours for free. But if you look at the version of there, it is the incorrect version of there. It's like the possessive version of there instead of like the contraction version of they are." And then interestingly enough, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, if you've played this game, you know that there are different badges you can collect for accomplishing various things across the game. They're just kind of like little milestones awarded, kind of like the Nook Miles things, but a little more limited in scope. So there's 3 different levels to most of the badges you can get. Like, for instance, there are some money-related badges you can get, like the Avid Bell Saver badge, which is when you've saved up 1 million bells in your savings account in Animal Crossing. Now, the interesting thing is, though, when you get the gold version of the Bell Saver badge, you get this by saving up 100 million bells in your savings account in your Animal Crossing game, which is a ton of bells. But the badge itself has this flavor text saying that you've received it for players who've saved up over 1 billion bells, which is not the case. You only need 100 million. Still a lot, but definitely not quite 1 billion. And while we're on the topic of flavor texts having a small typo, we have to talk about the massive rabbit hole and movement that started just from a simple spelling error in one of the Nook Mile text flares that ended up becoming this massive thing, all because of a YouTuber known as Nick Robinson realizing this typo and then making it his own personal mission to do whatever it takes to let Nintendo know that they misspelled the word kindness in this one small section of Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I absolutely love how this story went and what ended up happening with this. So if you didn't know, Nick Robinson is a very popular video game YouTuber. He's known for telling stories on a ton of different games, a lot of the times related to Nintendo, and he always goes above and beyond, just taking things maybe like one step further than you would expect from like a basic documentary or investigative style video. Like for instance, he'll fly to Tokyo just to try to figure out who voiced some obscure narration lines in an obscure 90s video game, or he'll fly to Japan just to find the Microsoft Binbo's store in real life. Maybe he just likes flying to Japan. I don't know. Nonetheless, when Nick Robinson discovered that in Animal Crossing New Horizons there was a spelling error and kindness was misspelled, missing the N, he made videos documenting this. He called Nintendo on the phone, filed an official support request. He made a petition on change.org that got 34,000 signatures, and after radio silence, 2 months later, Nintendo actually fixed the spelling error in an update. And Nick Robinson was thrilled.
Yo! They did it!
We have nothing but support for people like Nick Robinson who spearhead Animal Crossing related movements like this. And yeah, this one was a pretty good one. Okay, so I need you guys to bear with me because this next one I'm pretty sure exists. I think it makes sense why it would exist, but I can't find any source or evidence proving that it exists unless I found something after the time that I recorded this, and then that screen, here it is on the screen. But I've seen discussions online of people suggesting that in the older Animal Crossing games, the UK releases of the game had different spellings for Sabertooth, and in general, there are ways, I guess you could spell saber by switching the B and the R around, kind of like the company Dunder Mifflin and Sabre. Nonetheless, with there being a saber-toothed tiger in Animal Crossing as a fossil you can recover, apparently in some of the older games it's spelled as Sabre-toothed tiger. Is this the name that they actually go with in European copies of the game? And also there's discussion that in some places in the North American version of the game, it'll say Sabre-tooth even though it's supposed to just say Sabertooth, and vice versa. So what's fully going on here? If anybody has an older Animal Crossing game and would like to look into it and crack the code for us, it would be much appreciated. Just let us know in the comments down below. For a very long time in Animal Crossing New Horizons, if you flew with Wilbur to any of the secret islands, when he was explaining that they had landed and that they'll be ready to go whenever, there is the time where he will say Bunsen burners to like start the engines or whatever, and the word Bunsen is actually misspelled here if you look close enough. Back when Animal Crossing Wild World first released, back in the great era where video games actually had little pamphlet manuals inside of the game itself, and it made you feel like you're buying more than just a game. It was an experience. But hey, I was that kid who enjoyed looking into the little manuals and trying to learn as much as I could about the game. And the Wild World game manual specifically included some interesting things, like Nook's Cranny is straight up just misspelled right here in the art that was used for that pamphlet directly. So yeah, Nook's Cranny, pretty big spelling error right here in some key art. Okay, now I gotta say, one of my favorite people in the Animal Crossing community by far is JVGS Jeff. Jeff's been making videos forever on Animal Crossing and also has a website where he's been sharing his experiences over the years. And fortunately enough for us, with all of the documentation that Jeff has done, he's managed to catch some very interesting things that I feel like so many casual Animal Crossing fans have missed when it comes to either weird wording or spelling errors out there. Like for instance, he found a very peculiar thing when it came to the character Copper in the first Animal Crossing game. Now, Copper talks about one of his campaigns he has where he tries to bust illegal parkers. But look there, the BIP campaign is missing some letters. Well, it's just missing the G between the N, but still, that's kind of interesting. Maybe this speaks some truths behind the competency of the Animal Crossing Police Department. Maybe Copper and Booker aren't that great after all, and can't even spell, you know, common-ish words. Also, interestingly enough, Jeff's run into a weird instance where during a meteor shower, Emerald was talking about herself in the third person, saying that Emerald was taking the best spot to watch the meteor shower, and then also suggested that Emerald leave room for the rest of them. This is really, really bizarre to me that this could even happen. Now, obviously this dialogue is intended for another villager to be talking about, but somehow in Jeff's playthrough, the villager ended up talking about themselves and made it seem like it's some third person existential crisis or something that the villager must be going through. I mean, you know you're in trouble when you start talking about yourself in the third person. But really, that's not where this one one stopped either. Jeff had also had an instance in Animal Crossing Wild World for the DS where similarly Gaston starts talking about himself in the third person. This next one happened when Jeff was trying to trade a butterfly with Gaston, who requested it in the first place, and then after agreeing to the trade, Gaston responds with, "Whoa, really? Well, I don't care what Gaston says." What does that mean? There was also the time where Jeff looked at his bulletin board in the game, which usually gives you updates about what's happening in your town. Sometimes there's posts about the weather, and one time there was a warning that the cold temperatures would prevent the lake from freezing. That's not how lakes work. Jeff has caught Tortimer saying "everyone's so happy as of everyone." And then there was a time where Sprinkle gave Sprinkle's picture to Jeff, which is deep on so many levels because the item itself is labeled Sprinkle's picture with the apostrophe and the S, but the character's name is Sprinkle, not Sprinkles. I don't know how Jeff has managed to catch all of these errors and not just like click through them, not thinking anything about it, but I really appreciate it. Matter of fact, JVGS Jeff has been such an amazing resource in the Animal Crossing community, just with all of the stuff that he's documented on Animal Crossing over the years. If you're not already subscribed to his channel, make sure you are. It's like required material for an Animal Crossing fan, and he has 3 videos of just some of the weird mistakes and occurrences that he's found on his own. There'll be a link in the description down below, but his channel's great. Okay, over in the official Animal Crossing New Horizons guidebook, now, mind you, we'll find that these official guidebooks sometimes aren't so helpful after all. There are some mistakes here in these books. There's always mistakes in guidebooks, especially the Animal Crossing ones for some reason. The YouTuber Emerald Otter actually discovered that in the Animal Crossing New Horizons official guidebook, there is an error in the fish section where the image and information used for the pufferfish is switched out with the information regarding the blowfish and vice versa. It's a pretty easy mistake to make, but hey, this is supposed to be the official helpful tool that you probably spent like $20 or $30 on because these type of books are expensive for some reason. At least get it right. I mean, there's all this information for free online anyways. If they're going as far as buying the book, you can at least give them the correct information. That's actually not the only mistake that has existed out there. Now, I never owned the other Premia guides after just the first one that came out with the GameCube version of the game. I figured out how to use the internet by Wild World times, so I didn't need to buy the Premia books anymore. But apparently there are some other errors across the books that did release over the years. Like in Animal Crossing New Leaf, there's a ton of reports online of people who use that book to try to navigate how and which coffees to make for different villagers. Because in New Leaf, you had this whole like job you could do where you worked at the coffee shop. Yeah, apparently a ton of the information in the coffee section of the guidebook is incorrect, so it won't actually help you do things correctly. Also, I can't help but to feel really bad for all of the hardcore Animal Crossing fans who, in the guidebook, it told them that the silver axe never breaks, and they would finally get the silver axe in Animal Crossing New Leaf, swing it around, and, well, it broke. Rest in peace, Silver Axe users out there. Nintendo did create the Nintendo Club promotional series, which was like restructured, but now there was new ways you could turn your points in to real world items if you wanted to. The whole Club Nintendo thing was interesting, and one of the awards for spending enough money was access to a special Animal Crossing themed poster. However, this poster is a little interesting. They made a ton of mistakes across the board when it came to printing out this poster, and somehow there wasn't like the correct quality assurance team looking into this because so many players got sent this poster that wasn't even correct. There was a lot of typos and errors in it. Sometimes some of the villagers in the poster would be named incorrectly, other times the poster would come damaged to some players, and other times it just felt like this poster was not at all finished. This actually resulted in Club Nintendo offering to send new posters to everybody who redeemed the posters while they were available during a limited time, and Nintendo did go ahead and upgrade it and make it look nicer. Okay, now let's quickly talk about the Hylian Loach for a second because this one's very interesting. Back in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, there was this little side quest you can go and do where you go fishing and you try to catch the rarest fish in the game known as the Hylian Loach. Now, do you remember ever going as far as trying to catch this back in the day when you're a kid? Maybe, but here's the interesting thing. While the community normally talks about this being called the Hylian Loach, and despite most people referring to this, the fish has actually always been called the Hyrule Loach in the Legend of Zelda games, or at least it originally was in Ocarina of Time. There are a couple of videos out there of various YouTubers talking about this as a potential Mandela effect. I recommend watching Goose Folklore's video going into this this as its own Legend of Zelda Mandela effect, but maybe a side effect of this potential Mandela effect of a bunch of people misremembering the Hyrule Loach as the Hylian Loach is Animal Crossing's writing being affected by that as well. As in Animal Crossing, the original one on the GameCube, if you catch a Loach, it makes a Legend of Zelda reference here. But it doesn't reference just Hyrule, it specifically references the Hylian Loach. And mind you, this GameCube version of Animal Crossing came out in 2001, before the mass spread of the internet and people regularly asking and misremembering the correct term. It's very unlikely that Nintendo's localization team chose to purposely make a reference to a Mandela effect, as those weren't really commonplace back in the early 2000s as a talking point just yet. The most likely theory is that whoever is a part of the localization team wanted to make a reference to the, of course, Legend of Zelda and the Hyrule Loach, as that fishing minigame was very popular back in the day. But could they have misremembered themselves and all the other people who read into it also didn't catch it either? It's very, very fascinating. And I just think it's unique how this Hyrule Loach, Hylian Loach debate has raged on for a long time, but only recently has it been brought to more people's attention nowadays, with videos and discussion really only being brought up in a bigger sense in the last year. So what actually happened here? Was it an error, or was this intentional all along? I mean, technically, if we want to take things a step further and look at it more specifically and get really into it, we have Ocarina of Time and the 3DS remake from 2011, referring to it as the Hyrule Loach, but Twilight Princess has a random book referencing a Hylian Loach. So I don't know anymore what to think. Okay, this video though overall isn't just supposed to pinpoint spelling errors along the way. We're looking at all different types of errors and things that can occur, and besides, you know, the generic online disconnection errors that seem to be commonplace, especially sometimes when you're doing shady deals with other people through Nookazon and they maybe try to get away with stealing some things, they might quickly try to disconnect in a certain way. While those error messages are player driven, sometimes other error messages can just pop up from time to time. We've talked briefly about the weird Animal Crossing villager glitch where a villager will move away but their house will still be there for an extra day, and this like placeholder text is there, and it's kind of creepy actually. We have occasionally from time to time had it where over on my wife's island, if she hadn't reset her Nintendo Switch in a couple of days and just kind of had Animal Crossing on in sleep mode and would pick up the game, play it, jump back on, a new day would start or whatever. Sometimes after a while the game starts acting kind of weird, and we have had it from time to time where we'll get that Nintendo Switch notification saying that an error had occurred and the software has to be like ended, which is always a little bit weird all of a sudden for that just to pop up and you have to fully restart the game. Some players though had it off way worse. At the beginning of Animal Crossing New Horizons release, there were some players who reported that their save data would be corrupted and they would get this error message in their Animal Crossing New Horizons. The thing that was incredibly awful about this specific error message in those earlier days was that this actually predated when Animal Crossing finally added in cloud saving backup. So players who got this error message lost everything that they had worked for in those early months of Animal Crossing, and it wasn't until later on when the cloud saving backup would come where if for whatever reason your entire save file of Animal Crossing just went up in flames for who knows what reason, you would at least be able to contact Nintendo support and get your island restored. Now I think the main reason they do the backups is so that A, if your Nintendo Switch is lost or stolen, you can recover your island to some extent, or I guess B, in the off chance that somehow your Switch has its data randomly corrupted, or I guess if you damaged your Switch and the save got corrupted that way, that could happen too, you would at least be able to not lose everything you worked for potentially for years at that point from Animal Crossing. There are a couple of other interesting examples of corrupted save data in Animal Crossing games in the past, and while none of these are necessarily as like spooky as a creepypasta could suggest, they always are a little unsettling seeing them pop up in some of the older games like New Leaf or even games that came out long before that. There are other little small errors that have existed, things that that almost fall into the glitches category, another video we've talked about in the past. Like, for instance, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, you can't dig up any saplings that are too close to the ocean, and if they're planted there, you just have to wait for them to grow before you can cut them down. Or there's other glitches out there too where you can force yourself to trip at the right angle and fall into a river. From there, you can glitch all over the place. We've actually looked into a lot of Animal Crossing glitches over the years, definitely things you're not supposed to be able to do that you are able to do in Animal Crossing. So if you want to check that video out, maybe, look at the video that's suggested on your screen. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching this video and hanging out with us. We appreciate all of the support. We just hit 50,000 subscribers here on this channel, which is really awesome. We're really ecstatic about that, and we're just gonna keep going, keep making Animal Crossing content. Who cares if we haven't had an update in years, and it might be years before we get a new game. We're here, we're gonna keep playing it. We got stuff to do still, so if you like this video, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching on TV, taking the 2 seconds to go out of your way to subscribe also means you might see our videos more often in your recommended, so double win there. All right, we'll see you guys next time with a new video.